While this video is personally a little uncomfortable for me to make, and probably also won't be the most successful views-wise, it's important for me to genuinely serve my audience, and I think that a topic which is of massive service is speaking about investing, how a normal person who has honestly no interest in spending really any time at all managing investments actually manages to have my money grow itself. So I'm going to take you through the 6 steps I took from not having a clue to know how to invest to now being fully confident in what I'm doing and feeling secure in knowing that I'm doing something exceptionally important and impactful for my future self. Step number 1, I educated myself. I knew enough to know that it probably wasn't a great idea to just hear from a friend, I invested my money in X way, and just do the same thing. I didn't want to be the blind following the blind, and I knew that financial health is one of those key areas of life that if I got it right, would be a massive blessing in my life and was therefore worth spending some time learning about. So I did some Googling on the best finance books and honestly bought and read about like 10 of them. I also started binge listening to some reputable podcasts on the topic too. Now, I'll condense down my top recommendations here, what books are good and what they're good for. The first one being The Index Card by Harold Pollack and Helene Olin. Now, this is perfect if you are completely new to like finance and investing and you want some beginner-friendly, quick guide, basically on the key points that you need to know. The author, Harold, was kind of fed up with all of the confusing, conflicting financial advice that was out there, and said that what people really needed to know to manage their own personal finances and retire comfortably could probably fit onto a single index card. That was the idea behind the book, and it is fantastic. Book number 2 is The Simple Path to Wealth by J.L. Collins. So this book is another super easy read, and it gives you a perfect introduction and explanation on investing. The author, J.L. Collins, explains the stock market, its rises and falls, the bull markets and bear markets and bonds and index funds and asset allocation and dollar cost averaging and more, and all of those confusing financial terms that you've heard and you've nodded along pretending like you know what they mean, but this book actually explains them really simply. At the end of this book, you will not only understand investing, how to do it properly, and how to hold your nerve when the market goes wild, but also a little bit of practical advice on picking investments too. With other investment books, I felt like I read them and understood the concepts, but I didn't really know what to practically do next. And this book was one of the few which I feel like actually covered this kind of vital piece of information really well. Book number 3 is The Little Book of Common Sense Investing by John C. Bogle. Now, this book is where things get a little bit more advanced and complex. Written by John C. Bogle, you might have heard his name before. He is the creator of something called an index fund, and that is a super popular financial tool and investment option. And he's also the founder of Vanguard, which is personally the company and platform which I choose to invest my money with. This book goes into depth understanding the market and gives a ton of detailed examples on what would have happened with your money had you invested it in different ways in the market over the years. And if you listen to any advice on finance these days, you'll hear that index funds are all the rage, but you might not quite understand why. And I think that's super important for you to understand why you're making a decision instead of just following what everyone else is doing. By the end of this book, you'll also be an index fund advocate, and you'll truly understand why they're so incredible and such a fantastic tool for investing your money, which again is going to be really vital information to be equipped with when the markets take a downturn and uneducated investors pull out at just the wrong time. Book number 4 is The Millionaire Teacher by Andrew Holleman. Now, this one is a book which is for you if you're in a very specific situation like me. This book was written by a teacher who taught at international schools and who moved countries every few years. So it's specific advice for anyone who is in a similar situation to that. Now, I'm not a teacher at an international school, and I would imagine most of you aren't either, but if you're digital nomading or moving countries a lot, then basically just ignore the word teacher in the book and it's pretty much perfect for you. I moved abroad after college and I honestly have no idea which country I'll be in when I retire, which makes investing a little bit more complicated. A lot of countries have different investment vehicles or wrappers, which are tax efficient ways to save for your future, things like 401ks in the US, RSPs in Canada, and pensions in the UK. And if you're always moving or not sure where you're going to end up like me, you can't really take advantage of these things, and it makes investing a lot more tricky, but not impossible. So this book is really gonna help you if you're in that situation. And book number 5, I also recommend your country's version of Personal Finance for Dummies. So there's a few other things that you should think about and do before you even get into investing, a few insurances that are advisable, some other recommendations on debt if you have any. And these books give you a really quick and simple explanation of the different tax efficiencies and quirks on investments in your own specific country that you should definitely know. I also listened to a few financial podcasts, Dave Ramsey's show, and also when I was in the UK, I was listening to and watching on YouTube. It's called Meaningful Money. It is an incredible UK specific podcast and video channel for really great advice. Now these shows, specifically Dave's, I found really motivating, and it keeps me excited about doing something positive for my future self when, of course, our automatic default is to simply just live in the moment and go after the immediate rewards. So once I felt I knew enough about what I was doing, I noticed some consistent themes between these books and others, and I just needed to take some action. So step 2 was deciding how much I had to invest with. So I looked at the age at which I was starting on investing, because that's a factor in what percentage of your income that you need to save. I also looked at my budget and what I could realistically put aside for investing, while also putting money towards the other priorities that I had in my life at the time, like putting money towards a wedding and a house down payment, and also an emergency fund. And as different events have happened in my life, the percentage of take home, which I actually put towards investing, has both gone up and down, and that's okay. I have a financial freedom number, which I'm working towards, and when I can put more money towards it, I'm excited to be able to reach that goal faster. And when I can't, I just remind myself that it is what it is, and I'm gonna try my best to get back to the higher percentage as and when I can. Step number 3 was to pick the investment type or vehicle which worked best for me. So I considered a few factors when I was picking. First, I wanted this to take next to no time for me to actually manage it. So real estate, or I know some people are really into opening an Airbnb as an investment, both of those were out for me. It also meant that picking individual stocks was out too, and also having my money in a bunch of different asset classes also wasn't gonna be a great idea for me, because then I'd need to keep up with the laws and the tax changes and everything, which might affect those different types of investments if I had many different types. Second thing for me was I was starting young-ish in my 20s, so I could invest in riskier items. So the very conservative stuff like bonds were of interest to me. Third, I'm also not a massive risk taker either, so investments like crypto also wasn't really my thing. I will say I have a very small amount of Bitcoin, but I only bought an amount which, if I fully lost it, I wouldn't mind at all. And then fourth factor was I'd seen enough graphs and charts in these books to know that expense ratios, that is the fees that you pay to own and hold the investments, might look small at say like 0.75% or 1%. But those teeny percentages often result in $100,000 or a few $100,000 more or less for you in your portfolio at the end. So I wanted the lowest fees possible on my investments too. And that left me with what honestly most of the books recommended anyways, and that was low-cost index funds or ETFs as my investment choice. With them, I could easily be diversified across a whole bunch of different countries and industries and even other investment types. I could, in a way, be in the real estate market without the hassle of actually owning real estate by just having real estate companies within my index funds. All with it taking me 5 minutes or less a month to buy some index funds and call it a day. At the very beginning, I made my life super simple. I just bought the index fund with the lowest expense ratio that I could find, which tracked the S&P 500 or the 500 biggest companies in America. Now, since then, I have ever so slightly changed what I buy to align with where I think the world is going and to spread my investments out over more countries. But to start, I legitimately just did that. And honestly, that investment has done super well for me. Now, I will say one other thing I do have in my portfolio, more out of fun and interest than anything else, is a few individual stocks. I have some Squarespace, some Shopify, and some Lululemon stocks. Now they say don't invest in anything that you don't understand. And specifically with Squarespace and Shopify, I know the industry, I get what they offer and how they stack up against their competitors. Lululemon was honestly just fun for me. These individual stocks, however, are again a very small portion of my portfolio, and I mostly just bought them because when I buy my other ETFs, and if I have a few dollars left sitting in the brokerage account uninvested, I can just buy these like cheaper stocks to use up the extra money sitting in the account. Step number 4, speaking of brokerage accounts, in order to buy ETFs or stocks or anything of the sort, you need one in order to buy stocks. Now, every country is different as to which brokerage account is best. When I say best, basically I mean has the lowest fees and allows you to buy the investment types that you want to buy. Now, I'm in Switzerland at the moment and chose Interactive Brokers, and when I was in the UK, however, I chose Vanguard. Now, I encourage you to do some Googling to see which brokerage account in your country has the lowest fees. Now, after that, the next thing which I found honestly really rather difficult was how do you even buy the investment? I knew that I wanted, for example, an ETF that tracked the S&P 500, but no book really goes into how to actually do that. It honestly took a fair bit of Googling to know, once I logged into the brokerage account, how to actually find the ETF that I wanted, understand what's called the ISIN number, which is a giant long list of numbers and letters, which defines each ETF, and then figure out how to actually buy it. Again, a tutorial on your chosen brokerage account can definitely help with this. Step number 5, this is where I'd actually buy my investments. Now, after I pay myself, which I actually just did a video a few weeks back on that, I will link it above and below for you if you want to know exactly my full process for figuring out how to determine what to pay myself from my business's revenue and then what I actually do with that money. And after I do all those things, that's when I buy the investments. So that involves me transferring money into my investment account and then purchasing my chosen ETFs. Right now, I'm buying VOO, VGT, and VEA. Those are all Vanguard funds with very low expense ratios. And if I have a few dollars left in the account, I might add some Shopify or Squarespace stock to that as well. I'm pretty sure there is a way to automate this, but honestly, I haven't gotten around to setting that up yet. But it's on my to-do list, as I know that the less of me that is involved in this process, the better. Step number 6 is do whatever it takes to stay the course. Now, I've listened to a few podcast episodes on Meaningful Money about behavioral finance, and one of the biggest hurdles to long-term wealth is ourselves, specifically ourselves making not great decisions. So apparently a few of the best things that we can do for ourselves is 1, not look at our investment accounts. Just delete the app from your phone and not look at it. Having easy access apparently makes people more likely to trade, which is proven isn't a good long-term decision. And second, when something happens and the market takes a hit, I do one of a few things. I remind myself of what I learned in all of those investment books in part 1, how the market works and what's really happening and what successful investors do in the face of a market scare. I'll sometimes go reread Tony Robbins' Unshakable book, which speaks specifically about this, which I would also definitely recommend. And then I always remember that when the market takes a hit, what really is happening is that stocks are on sale, and that's a good thing. Now, all of these steps are great and all, but if you're still struggling with your money because that mindset of yours is leading you to all kinds of bad decisions, then I had an incredible conversation with the money mindset expert, Catherine Morgan. You can watch it here, and she'll help you overcome all of your self-sabotage and challenges with money conversations with your partner and more in that video.